Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel Inclusive Bharat. And welcome to the daily editorial analysis of a Hindu newspaper. In this video we shall discuss the important editorial of 19th December 2023. These are the 5 articles taken up for discussion. Let's discuss the article one by one. The first article: legislative decline, security breach and government's response. Last week, there was a security breach in the Indian Parliament where people tried to draw attention to the issue of unemployment in a dramatic way. The government's reaction to this incident and their handling of the situation have been problematic. Denial of legislative debate. The government has prevented any discussion or debate in Parliament on the issue of unemployment. The chair of the Parliament has taken an unusual step by suspending a large number of opposition members who demanded a statement and debate on the issue. Suspensions of opposition members. A total of 92 opposition members of Parliament have been suspended, including 78 in one day. This is a significant increase compared to the 94 suspensions between 2014 and this session. Unlike in the past, where even members of the ruling party were suspended, this time, only opposition members have faced suspension. Disregard for deliberative democracy. Deliberative democracy, which involves elected representatives discussing and debating important issues, is a key element of a functioning democracy. The current government has shown a disregard for this process by not allowing proper debates, passing bills without enough discussion, and avoiding the use of committees to thoroughly examine issues. Undermining parliamentary processes. The article criticizes the government for not giving enough importance to legislative business and parliamentary work. The focus has shifted to theatrics and suspensions, with both ruling and opposition members engaging in one-upmanship. International perspectives on Indian democracy. Global research institutions like the VDEM Institute have labelled India as an electoral autocracy due to these actions, indicating a decline in democratic values. The use of laws like the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act to suppress dissent has contributed to India being classified as partially free by organisations like Freedom House. Concerns for democracy. The article concludes that the recent actions by the government are contributing to a decline in democracy in India. The use of suspension and suppression of dissenting voices raises serious concerns about the state of democracy in the country. That's it about this article. Now let's move on to the next article. Quote: unseemly turn. The article highlights a growing conflict between the governor and the state government in Kerala, particularly regarding university appointments and the use of constitutional powers. The conflict between the governor and the Left Democratic Front government in Kerala is getting worse. Governors in Kerala have had tense relations with non-BJP, Bharatiya Janata Party governments, mainly due to political and ideological differences. Root of the problem. The issue is rooted in the governor's role as the chancellor of universities and their constitutional power to approve bills, which is causing frustration for elected governments. Disagreements over appointments to the Senate of Kerala University have led to frequent protests. Current situation. Student activists claim the governor is appointing people with right-wing views to university positions, leading to protests. The governor, Arif Muhammad Khan, accuses the chief minister and the police of orchestrating a campaign against him. Legal perspective. Recent court judgments emphasize that elected governments should not be undermined by unelected governors. The Supreme Court ruling set aside the reappointment of a vice-chancellor in Kanna University due to unwarranted government interference. Advice to address the issue. The article suggests that organized protests are not the best solution, and chief ministers should discourage aggressive street protests. And proposes legislative solutions like removing governors as chancellors or transferring chancellor powers to another authority, but acknowledges difficulties in passing such bills. Long-term solution. The article advocates for a statutory prohibition on governors serving as chancellors of state universities, and also refers to the Punchy Commission recommendation to end the practice of burdening governors with the role of university chancellor. In summary, the article highlights a growing conflict between the governor and the state government in Kerala, particularly regarding university appointments and the use of constitutional powers. It suggests that protests may not be the best solution and proposes long-term measures, including legislative changes or a statutory prohibition on governors holding the position of university chancellor. That is it about this article. Let's move on to the next article. a blow for the rights of the legislative in lawmaking. The article explains a recent judicial decision that protects the rights of the legislature in the lawmaking process. The Chief Justice of India D.Y. Chandrachud recently delivered a significant judgment on November 10, 2023, in a case involving the state of Punjab. The judgment interprets Article 200 of the Indian Constitution, specifically focusing on the power of governors in the context of giving assent to bills passed by state legislatures. Let's see the key points of this article. Confusion on Article 200. There has been confusion about Article 200 and its first proviso, which deals with the governor's options when a bill is presented for assent after passing through the state legislature. Some constitutional experts believe that once the governor withholds assent, the bill is effectively dead. CJI's creative interpretation. Chief Justice Chandrachud interpreted Article 200 differently. He emphasized that if the governor decides to withhold assent, they must immediately send the bill back to the state assembly for reconsideration. Essentially, this makes withholding assent practically impossible, protecting the legislature's rights in lawmaking. Governors' delay tactics. Some governors have been known to delay decisions on bills for years, undermining the legislative process. The Supreme Court clarified that governors cannot unduly delay decisions on bills, reserving bills for President's consideration. Governors still have the option to reserve certain bills for the consideration of the President, but the scope of this power needs clarification. The second proviso to Article 200 specifies bills that must be mandatorily reserved for the President, particularly those affecting the powers of the High Court. Governor's discretion. There's ambiguity on whether governors can use their discretion to send any bill to the President for consideration. Recent instances, like in Kerala and Tamil Nadu, have raised questions about the extent of governors' power in this regard. In summary, the article explains a recent judicial decision that protects the rights of the legislature in the lawmaking process. It also highlights issues surrounding the power of governors to withhold assent and reserve bills for the President's consideration, pointing out the need for clarity in these areas. That is it about this article. Let's move on to the next article. Grassroots democracy as a bulwark against Maoist. The recent elections in Chhattisgarh were significant, particularly due to the influence of tribal voters, who make up 34% of the state's population. The tribal regions, especially Basta, are also affected by Maoist insurgency, and the relationship between tribal voters and political parties is crucial in forming the state government. Democracy in Maoist-affected areas. In areas influenced by Maoists, voter turnout was extremely low as 3% to 4%. This indicates a significant problem, as people are not participating in the democratic process. Maoists call for boycotts, claiming to fight for the people, but ironically, they prevent people from using the democratic process, which is a powerful tool for empowerment. Maoists' parallel government. Maoists try to establish their own government, called Jantana Sarkar, but this approach lacks long-term sustainability. Local tribal populations are becoming aware of their rights guaranteed by the Constitution, but there seems to be a disconnect preventing them from actively participating in the democratic process. Election issues and tribal aspirations. The dominant election issue related to tribals was religion-based conversions, considered by some as a distraction from more fundamental problems. Tribals, increasingly aware of their rights, are demanding what is rightfully theirs under the Constitution, and this awareness is reflected in movements like Pathalgadi in Jharkhand. PISA Act and implementation. The provisions of the Panchayats, Extension to Scheduled Areas, Act, PISA, passed in 1996, aims to empower Gram Sabhas, village councils, to govern various aspects of tribal communities' socio-economic lives. Unfortunately, state governments have not implemented it effectively, providing an opportunity for Maoists to exploit the gap and exert influence through their parallel government. Nurturing tribal leadership. To counter the Maoist influence, it's essential to nurture tribal leadership. This involves recognizing and empowering tribal leaders, giving them a voice in the political process. This resolution goes beyond just security and development. It's about enabling democracy at the grassroots level that understands and addresses tribal aspirations, thereby exposing the ulterior motives of the Maoists. Conclusion: addressing the Maoist challenge requires more than just short-term attention when incidents occur. It involves building a strong grassroots democracy that recognizes and addresses the needs and aspirations of tribal communities. This approach can render the influence of Maoists irrelevant in the long run. That is it about this article. Let's move on to the next article. What does COP28 means for the cities? The article emphasizes the need for recognizing and supporting cities in global efforts to combat climate change. The 28th Conference of Parties, COP28, in Dubai recently took place. It had mixed reviews. Some considered it a significant step towards ending the era of fossil fuels, while others felt it fell short. The conference focused on assessing global efforts to keep temperatures below 1.5 degrees Celsius and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The importance of cities in tackling climate change. Cities play a crucial role in the fight against climate change. Currently, more than half of the world's population lives in cities, and this is expected to increase. Cities consume a significant amount of energy and are responsible for a large portion of carbon emissions. Meeting the goals of the Paris Agreement, which aims to combat climate change, requires addressing urban issues. Special focus on cities at COP28. This year's COP had a dedicated day for discussing the relationship between urbanization and climate change. Ministers, local leaders, and organizations discussed the importance of including city perspectives in climate decisions. City representatives emphasized the principle of nothing for us without us, highlighting the need for cities to have a say in climate governance. Role of city representatives. City representatives argued for recognizing the role of subnational governments, like city governments, in global climate negotiations. They call for increased climate action at all levels of governance, direct financing, and technical assistance for cities. The idea is to acknowledge cities as key players in driving climate efforts, creating green jobs, and improving overall well-being. Challenges in the Global South. Cities in the Global South, developing regions, face greater vulnerability to climate change. Leaders in these cities have limited power, and many people work in informal sectors. Adaptation is crucial due to the susceptibility to climate disasters. Additionally, social and economic inequalities are prevalent. To address these challenges, there is a need for a significant shift in how cities are governed, including financial support from international agreements like COPs. Call for inclusion in climate action plans. City leaders often find themselves excluded when countries prepare climate action plans. The article suggests reclaiming space for cities in these discussions and ensuring their representation in climate action plans. Recognizing and supporting cities in planning both mitigation and adaptation strategies is essential. City initiatives. Despite challenges, some cities, like Chennai, are taking the lead in climate action. For example, Chennai aims to achieve zero emissions by 2050, surpassing the national government's target. This highlights the proactive role cities can play in meeting climate goals. Conclusion. While some view COP28 as less impactful, it has brought attention to the crucial connection between climate action, social justice, and the role of cities. The article emphasizes the need for recognizing and supporting cities in global efforts to combat climate change. So that's all for the day. If you like my initiative, do like the video and share it to your peer groups. And subscribe the channel for further updates.